Hello, my name is Tanisha Lewis, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the change model. So the change model was coined by Kurt Lewin, and I think it's a very simple and practical way of understanding the change process. It characterizes change into 3 stages, starting off with creating the perception for the need for change. Then it moves on towards the desired level of behavior. Then finally, it concretizes the new behavior as the new norm. So the first stage is unfreezing, which can be likened to cooking a meal. Now we all know that when you're preparing to cook a meal, you have to defrost the meat, right? So the same can be said about change. Before you implement it, you have to go through the initial step of unfreezing. Naturally, there will be resistance to change. And so it's important to communicate how the lack of change is hindering growth. I think the more information employees have about the impending change, the more motivated they will be to accept it. Okay, so the next step is to implement this stage, and this is known as the move stage. This is when the change becomes real, and people might struggle with the reality at first because it can be the hardest step to overcome since there's uncertainty and sometimes fear. During the change stage, people begin to learn accepted behaviors, new processes, and even adopt a new mindset. The more prepared they are for this step, the easier it is for them to adapt and to move on to the final stage. The final stage is the refreezing stage, which is making the change permanent. This is where a new behavior becomes habitual, and it's also important because it ensures that people do not revert to their old ways of doing things. It must be integrated into the organization's culture and seen as an acceptable way of doing things. Rewards and recognitions are often used to reinforce the change. In my own experience, I switched careers 2 years ago. I moved from being in the public sector in public relations to shipping and logistics in the private sector. While I was in the public sector, I supervised 1 employee, and now I'm responsible for a team of 8. The environment was different for me because there was a little bit of history. History because the company that I am now a senior manager in, it's owned by my aunt and uncle. And so some of the employees know me from I was about 16 years old. So one of the things that I had to do when I was taking over in that senior role is to establish boundaries and to communicate my expectations as it relates to the relationship and our interactions while we're in the workplace. So essentially, I had to unfreeze the informal nature of our relationship. And then in the second stage, which is the move stage, I had to communicate what my expectations were and just sort of guide them in terms of how our interactions would be going forward. And then in the final stage, I had to refreeze this new approach in the work environment. That's it. Thank you for listening.